very substantial news coming out of the G7 critical minerals meetings in France.
You really can't have LFP without phosphate. The G7 understands all of this.
Finally, now the politicians and some of the companies seem to be starting to listen.
Welcome back to Rockstock Channel. It's Friday, June 19th, and we're publishing today the longer interview with John Passalacqua we recorded earlier this week, detailing the big financing and offtake news First Phosphate announced in France, tied to the G7 Critical Minerals Resilience and Production Alliance. While Matt and I didn't have time to record our regular recap this week, there is plenty of content coming. Earlier this week, we published our interview with Anson Resources' Bruce Richardson. We also recorded a new interview with Rare Earths America's Don Swartz, and recently hosted a webinar with Noah Lithium Brine's CEO Gabriel Rubaca in collaboration with Amvest Capital. Both of those will be released next week. Matt and I are now heading to Las Vegas for Fast Market's flagship lithium battery materials and critical minerals conference. Between us, we'll be moderating or participating in 5 sessions and bringing you live content from the conference floor, including 6 corporate interviews from the Fast Market's live lounge. For updates throughout next week, please follow us on X at Matt_Fernley and me at Lithium-ion Bull. Before we begin, a reminder that Archaea Equity is an advisor to First Phosphate and holds equity interests in the company. We are not, of course, financial advisors. This video is for informational purposes only and should not be considered investment advice. Please do your own research and read the disclaimer at the end of this video. And I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Clean Elements, an investor group focused on providing growth capital for critical minerals developers focused on the energy transition. Clean Elements has invested over $30 million to date and is currently the largest shareholder in both Galan Lithium and Noah Lithium Brines, 2 companies developing high-grade lithium projects in Argentina. And with that, let's go directly to our conversation with First Phosphate CEO John Passalacqua. As we telegraphed earlier, we interviewed First Phosphate CEO John Passalacqua a couple of days ago on the back of very substantial news coming out of the G7-related critical minerals meetings in France. The company announced support from multiple export credit agencies, a potential 275 million Canadian guarantee for its Béguin-Lamarche project, support for its planned phosphoric acid facility at Port Saguenay, and confirmation of major offtake agreements. Matt's here, and he's going to dig in with some more detailed questions.
Excellent. Okay, John. Well, congratulations. A really, really important release, I think. Going through the release, I mean, there's terms in there like letter of intent, LOIs, export credit agencies, offtakes. For you, what's the single most important takeaway from today's announcement?
Yeah, the biggest takeaway is that governments and private industrial partners as well, Mayor Group, quoted on the Stock Exchange of Milan, $5 billion market cap, they're beginning to treat battery-grade phosphate the same way that we've started treating lithium, rare earths, and other strategic minerals. They see it as very critical to the whole onshoring of the LFP battery supply chain in North America and Western Europe. We're seeing allied countries starting to work together to secure these critical mineral supply chains. First Phosphate is now part of this conversation, and they're extremely serious, and they're coming to the table.
Excellent. Okay. I mean, the big number that jumps out is the 275 million LOI for the upstream project. How significant is that relative to the development of the Béguin-Lamarche project?
Yeah, it's very significant because export credit agencies and sovereign wealth funds are among the lowest cost sources of project financing available. For instance, IFO is backed by the Danish government, has a AAA rated guarantee program. Their interests send a very strong signal to commercial lenders that this project deserves serious consideration. And it also shows the very strategic nature of this product and this project for Europe.
Okay. Now, from my point of view, I think probably the most exciting part of this release is the support for the phosphoric acid plant, which I think is, a key part of or could be a key part of the battery value chain in the Atlantic Basin going forward. Can you just talk a little bit about what's come through from Italy and elsewhere in terms of support for that project, or that part of the project?
Yeah, as you know, we worked hard to de-risk the mine. The mine is now de-risked financially for a final investment decision. So now we went out to de-risk the phosphoric acid plant, and because critical mineral supply chains are increasingly international, Italy brings world-class phosphoric acid technology through Balestra and Mayer to the table. Mayer is also a $5 billion market cap company on the Milan Stock Exchange. And while Canada brings a resource, Europe wants secure access to critical battery materials, and partnerships like this one will help to achieve those objectives.
Okay, cool. And then let's talk about the offtake. Obviously, 200,000 tons a year of phosphate concentrate, but interestingly, also 60,000 tons a year of phosphoric acid. Obviously, that also helps with your de-risking.
Yeah, it certainly does. I mean, it really de-risks the two levels, the mine and the secondary transformation into phosphoric acid. Financing follows customers. Lenders want to know who will buy the product. These agreements demonstrate commercial demand for both the upstream, but also the midstream and the downstream. That's a key in building a fully integrated LFP battery supply chain in North America. So we've got offtakes along, different layers of the supply chain that we're building out from mine to market.
Okay. And I think one of the really interesting things about this release is this has not happened alongside a mining conference. This is alongside the G7 summit. And, First Phosphate is mentioned in this release, but also, another 5 or 6 other major critical minerals projects. What does it mean that we're getting this sort of release alongside the G7 summit now?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the top of the Western world, right? It doesn't get any better than that. The alliance under the G7 was specifically created to accelerate critical mineral projects by connecting governments, investors, and industrial partners. Being included in that framework speaks loudly for First Phosphate, demonstrates that our project aligns with the broader G7 objectives around supply chain resilience and battery manufacturing. And that sends an even stronger message to investors, to financiers, that this is a project of, multiple nation state interest.
Okay. Now, obviously on Rockstock channel, we bang on quite a lot about lithium. We talk about graphite, rare earths a fair amount. Up till now, there are not too many people talking about phosphate. Do you think it's finally started to break into the larger battery picture?
Well, I think so. And if not, with today's announcement that the G7 is extremely interested in high purity igneous phosphate, and they want this mine and further processing facilities in place as soon as possible, I think that sends a very strong message. And that, you got 3 nation states surrounding this project now, looking to have it financed and in production as soon as possible. And this is because LFP batteries are becoming increasingly important in energy storage, data centers, and mobility applications. You really can't have LFP without phosphate. 61% of the cathode of the LFP battery is phosphate. And as adoption grows, secure phosphate supply becomes increasingly strategic. The G7 understands all of this.
Yeah, and I think this is really important to emphasize, because various of us in the industry have been banging on about this for quite a while, but finally now the politicians and some of the companies seem to be starting to listen.
Well, look, I mean, I think it's it's final endorsement of something that we knew was critical. The LFP battery supply chain needs to onshore into the Western world. It has started to already. And the G7 is looking to First Phosphate to do that. We've had, since the very early days, a mine to market model. Obviously, it's resonated. It's resonated with 3 national governments, and it is now is now on their focus, and they want to help us to move forward.
Okay, cool. And final question from me. What can we now expect? I'm almost scared to ask, because you've given us quite a lot of catalysts in the last 3 months, but what sort of catalyst can we expect from First Phosphate over the next 3 to 6 months or so?
Yeah, we're going to see the conversion of these expressions of interest into definitive financing agreements. I wouldn't say necessarily over the next few months, but it's something that's going to happen as we progress down the road. We need to advance first our engineering work. We need to get our feasibility study done at the Beijing-La Marche mine. and then start up the phosphoric acid plant. And we have to continue to build out this integrated North American LFP battery supply chain that we've been discussing here for the last few years, of which, First Phosphate is the leader out there.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I just have a final question. Also, just a comment and observation, because when this came on the tape, it just reminded me of when Mark Carney was recently at a ribbon cutting at Nouveau Monde Graphite, right, which is also in Quebec, and they pieced together financing for the mine, but that also had an Italian component. ENI, I think, had took a 12% interest and wrote a significant check for that. Here you have Italy in this deal as well that you're announcing together with Denmark. Do you have any view on Italy and then just broadly, in the junior mining space, you spend years trying to convince governments that, their project is strategic, right? Here you are, how much of what we're witnessing today is First Phosphate, proactively cultivating, building this international relationships, versus the government just suddenly having woken up and said, we need to find the P. We need to not forget the P. And where do we find it? And they came to you.
Yeah, look, I think it's a combination of both. We spend years educating stakeholders about the critical role of high purity phosphate, especially high purity igneous phosphate in LFP batteries. At the same time, governments are doing their homework. They've woken up. They're realizing that the battery supply chains require much more than just lithium alone. Today's announcement reflects that conversions that in order to get to the end product, you're going to need everything in LFP batteries. So you're going to need lithium, iron, and phosphate. And they've put a really special role here on phosphate. And they've really, put special trust in First Phosphate to deliver that LFP battery supply chain that the West needs. That question gets to the real story. First Phosphate has gone from a Quebec phosphate project to participating in, an emerging G7 critical mineral strategy, right? Something that is the G7 coordinating across, numerous nation states in the Western world. That's an angle that differentiates us from, just standard project financing, right? The support of the nation states just makes that so much easier.
Okay, great. And I thought that was the final question, but I'm just remembering you raised some money at $2, right? Recently, and then the whole market's kind of fell off in the past kind of 2 weeks. So I'm just looking at your stock. It was in a trading halt this morning. It opened up about 10%. It's up about 10% now, but it's $1.78, and you're in the midst of closing a financing at $2, right? So what do you think about that? Or what how'd the financing come about, right? And just talk about money.
Yeah, so the financing is closed. We had 3 of our larger investors that wanted to invest an additional $5 million into the company. We called a raise at $2 per share. That raise was quickly oversubscribed. Within 24 hours. It blossomed up to about $15 million. And despite the problems in the markets the last couple of weeks, obviously due to the Iran war, our shareholders were so committed that even though the stock had dropped a little bit, because all of these stocks had dropped in sympathy with some of the problems in the world, they still closed the financing. So we still closed the financing at $2, even though the stock at that time was trading at $1.60. That just goes to show the confidence and the secular kind of view, the long-term view that our investors are taking on First Phosphate. And, also now, the stock has recovered a bit. It's getting closer to that $2 range, but it really is about an execution story, right? First Phosphate is executing on this mine to market LFP battery supply chain. We know that there's a huge prize at the end of it. And our shareholders see that. They see that prize. They see that the whole LFP battery supply chain is quickly onshoring here into North America. And we're not here for, the ticks in the stock. We're here for the longer term. And we're here to build that LFP battery supply chain from mine to market, starting with the purest igneous phosphate found anywhere in the world in Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, Quebec.
That sounds great, John. If I step back, in history, you're doing a financing. It's at, your stock's above 2. You do it at 2. It has, a warrant attached to it at 250, but a very short dated one that ends in December. But for the market to completely fall out of bed, it's very typical that your investors or your brokers would kind of come back and say, okay, I want a lower price. And that didn't happen here. That's impressive. Just as a general capital markets observer for 30 years, that's impressive.
Yeah, the reason that didn't happen is we've cultivated a shareholder base very close to us. We've never used investment banks to date for our financings. We've raised $78 million all on our own. Myself and most of our senior management, we know every single shareholder that's pretty much come into our company. So, we've got to follow, we've got a base. We treat it like our own money. I've got $2 million of my own money invested. The board, myself, is $4 million in total. We buy regularly in the market. I bought a lot of stock last March when the world was falling apart with tariffs and all that. I regularly buy in the market. All of our board, myself as well, are 100% compensated in stock, not in cash, because we want to keep the money in the company. And then our management is like about 50% stock, 50% cash. And they all want to be involved in the company. We operate this thing like one big family. And we're all looking for that prize. We're all really looking down to the future. That's why I'm saying we're not focused on these stock ticks. We have avoided all the bad toxic capital. The company has no debt. Shareholders are very well positioned. Many of them have been involved since 25 cents, 35 cents, 50 cents, 90 cents. So for now, everyone is doing well. And so they're very, very happy to support the company, especially because there has been execution and there continues to be execution. But above all, it's the eye on the prize. It's the eye on landing this LFP battery supply chain here in North America. And we're so far ahead of anybody else in doing that.
Thanks for that additional color. Tight capital structures with highly incentivized management team is definitely something we look for. And, for all our viewers, just a reminder, we are an advisor to and hold equity interest in First Phosphate. We identified the company late last year. I think did our first interview. The stock was well under $1. And we're looking at, it's nearly doubled or has doubled over a 6-month time frame. Yet another, diversification for Rock Stock Channel and ARK Equity. We haven't really talked about phosphate, but Matt, you have helped identify and diversify away from lithium, finding interesting diamonds in the rough. So exciting to see what's happened so far. And this is very big news, John. Like it's milestone after milestone, in the 6 months. So congratulations and look forward to further momentum. You're a 316 million Canadian market cap. That's still far away from a unicorn. And we've watched many companies achieve that unicorn status over, periods of time in bull markets as they hit milestones. So fingers crossed, not investment advice, but we're holding tight onto our shares as well, John. Thanks.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you, Matt. Always great to be with you.